that they cannot participate in political issues during the Olympics. But can you talk about that moment, where you were, who you were with?
I was in Turin, in Italy, in the Winter Olympics. And for some clerical mistake, I was chosen to carry the flag with with 7 other women. We were 8 women. And I was standing behind Sophia Loren and before Susan Sarandon. And there's a fantastic picture that I have in my office. You see Sophia Loren, beautiful, tall, like a giraffe, you know, elegant. And the flag, a hole, and then Susan Sarandon, also beautiful. I'm under the flag. I'm 5 feet tall and I am under the flag. So I was invisible.
Wangari Maathai was also there.
She was Wangari
the Nobel
Maathai.
Peace Prize winner of Kenya.
Yes, who is also tall. Everybody's, there she is, Wangari.
You describe hugging her very tightly.
Yeah, she's like a tree, you know. You hug her and she smells like a tree and she's warm and wonderful, just wonderful. And with Sophia Loren, it's also wonderful. She is over 70. She looks great. She eats carbohydrates all the time. We were like 9 hours in the green room, and she was eating bananas and pretzels while everybody else was watching their diet. And I asked her, how come you look so good? She said, posture. Posture is very important, and don't make old people's noises. So, when you get up from the chair, no. I try to follow the advice.
Isabel, being an immigrant in America, can you talk about that? You talked about having a panic attack during an immigration raid in San Francisco.
I work very closely, my foundation works very closely with immigrants in the place where we live, most of them Latino immigrants, Hispanics. And there were raids, families that were torn apart. They would break into their houses in the middle of the night or at 4 o'clock in the morning before people had time to get to work. And they would take their parents and leave the children behind. So the community tried to help, and it's very frightening. I lived in Venezuela 13 years as a political refugee, and some time during that period, I was illegal. I didn't have documents. I could be pulled out of a bus and deported. If I would have been deported to Chile, that would have meant death. So I know the feeling of terror, of vulnerability that the immigrants feel. I am very privileged. I'm married to an American. I'm a citizen. I have documents. I support myself. I don't have to be standing in the street waiting for a truck to pick me up to go pick oranges. So I know how privileged I am. But because my foundation works so closely with immigrants, I also know how hard it is for them.
And that foundation, you write in the Sum of Our Days about your trip to India, and you also write about meeting a woman here in New York on the sidewalk on Fifth Avenue.
Well, after I wrote Paula, the book was incredibly successful, and I decided that I was not going to touch any of the income that would come from that book that was set aside in an account, waiting to see what I could do with that money that would be meaningful to Paula, who worked all her life for women and children as a volunteer, and she was a psychologist and a teacher. And after the book was published, I was in a book tour here in New York, and I saw a woman in Fifth Avenue wrapped in a black plastic bag, a garbage bag, and she was crying in the street. She was African-American or African, I don't know. And I tried to connect. She couldn't speak the language. She was crying. I had the feeling that I couldn't do anything for that person. Then we did a trip to India, and in a village, in the middle of nowhere, there was not even a village there. It was a tree, an acacia tree, and some women, 6 or 7 women, around the tree with a few little kids. And we got out of the car to greet them, to try to talk to them. And in India, like in many places of the world, people really touch. There's not this distance that we have here in the West. And so they started touching me, and then when I was leaving to go to the car, one of the women gave me a little package. And I had given her all my bracelets, so I thought she was trying to give me back something. And I said, no, it's not necessary, but she insisted. And she put me this thing in my pants. It was very small. And when I wrapped this dirty rag, there was a newborn baby inside. She was giving me her baby. And the driver of the car that we had rented took the baby out and gave it back to her and pushed us back into the car and said, "You can't take it, you can't take it, you can't take it out of the country, and it's dirty, don't touch it." I was in shock. I didn't react until I was in the car. And my husband said, "Why would she give you the baby?" And the driver said, "It's a girl. Who wants a girl?" And that sort of gave me the idea of what I was going to do with that money that I had in the bank. So I created a foundation to empower women and girls. And now my daughter-in-law, Lori Barra, runs the foundation. And for more than 10 years, she has done a wonderful, wonderful job.
As you live in this country, one of the big issues of war, torture, your thoughts about that, coming from where you've come from?
I don't think anybody in their right mind can approve of torture. Nobody. First of all, it's not effective. When you torture someone, you get the wrong information. The horrible thing about torture is that you don't need to be a psychopath to torture. Almost anybody can do it if they are trained to do it. And the victim and the victimizer are both horribly traumatized by this experience. We live that in Chile, and we know that it leaves scars in the society for generations. This needs to be stopped in Guantanamo, in Abu Ghraib, in all the secret prisons that the United States is using today to torture people. No one can approve of that.
Would you say you come out of a country of torture, whose whole population has been tortured one way or the other in Chile?
30 years have passed since the military coup, and still there are people traumatized, families that lost children, people that are still looking for their grandchildren or their children that died in torture and their bodies were never found. No one is accountable. There's impunity, you know. And 30 years later, we have democracy, and still there is impunity for the torturers who are walking in the streets. Michelle Bachelet lived in the same building with her torturer. She would find him in the elevator. This is the president of Chile. This is how traumatized a society can be.
Isabel Allende, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Her book is The Sum of Our Days. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report as we wrap up today. Democracy Now! Produced by Mike Burke, Shufo Dokudusa, Aramate, Angelique Kamet, Jeffrey Hageman, Steve Martinez, Nicole Salazar, Hani Massoud, Ravi Karen, Mike DeFilippo, Miguel Noguera, Peter Curry's our engineers. Special thanks also to Becca Staley. We begin our 12th anniversary Democracy Now! Tour, standing up to the madness around this country in New Orleans on Thursday night. I'll be in Metairie on Thursday night at Barnes & Noble, Friday night in the Superdome with Eve Ensler, on Sunday in Seattle, Monday in Portland, Oregon, Tuesday and Wednesday in San Francisco. Then we head to Houston on Thursday, Santa Fe, Albuquerque, Denver. Go to our website, democracynow.org, to get all the details. I hope to see you there. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for joining us.